Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for Peer Connections on direct funding. I would like to begin by acknowledging that we live and work on the traditional territories of many Indigenous nations across Turtle Island. While we meet today on a virtual platform, we must recognize the importance of the land and our treaty agreements. We acknowledge the ancestral and unceded territories of all Inuit, Métis, and First Nations peoples. As our Spinal Cord Injury Ontario community encompasses many geographies, we ask that everyone take a few moments of their day to find out which unceded or treaty territories you may live and work on. You can use the link www.native-land.ca to learn more, and we will put that in the chat box. So my name is Julie. For those that don't know me, I'm a peer program coordinator for Spinal Cord Injury Ontario in the London area. Two of my colleagues are on this call. My co-host, Jess Bree, is the peer program coordinator in Toronto. And we also have Rick, who is the manager of our peer program. So as I just mentioned, we are going to be recording the session. So if you do not wish to be seen, please just ensure that your video is turned off. We do welcome any questions throughout the presentation. So you can either ask your question in person if you want to just use the raise hand icon that is located in the reaction section, or you can use the chat feature as well that we will monitor throughout the presentation. So again, today we are going to be talking and learning more about direct funding. So we've got Thomas and Eva with us here today just to share more about the program. So I will let either of you take it from here.
Hi, everyone. Nice to be here today. Thank you so much. I'm Eva, and I'm an interview coordinator at CILT as part of the intake program. So very happy to be here.
Hello, everyone. My name is Thomas Chappell. I'm the intake manager, and it's really great to see everyone. Eva and I have been at CILT for only a relatively short time, but we've been in the independent care community, independent living community for how long, Eva? About 50 years between us now. So
maybe 60, I think.
Maybe getting there.
We're aging ourselves.
So thank you, everybody, for coming, and we're really happy to be able to share some information about the direct funding program here at CILT, and hopefully answer some of your questions about the program, so we can get started. As our first, I don't know, I guess can people see the? Should we go to the slideshow?
There we go.
There we go. That's what we are. Self-managed attendance services, the direct funding program. So I'll just read a little bit and then just get a sense of everything. So the CILT, the Centre for Independent Living in Toronto, is a resource center for people with disabilities. It assists people with disabilities to take control of their own lives and live independently in the community. Then we can go on. So
go ahead, Thomas.
Go ahead, Eva.
Yeah, and as you may all know, the independent living movement believes that people with disabilities know their needs best. They're capable of finding solutions to problems around their own issues, and should be able to take their own risks and make mistakes and focus on their quality of life and not limitations. So definitely everything we do at CILT is based on that premise.
So where does the money come from? So at the very top, as I see here, is the Ministry of Health and Long-Term Care, and it filters down to Ontario Health, which is Toronto Central. Every section has their own. And then down to CILT and the direct funding program. And then the money goes down to self-managers. And those are the people that are been through the preparation process, gone through the interview and deemed eligible. And then that funding is so you can pay for your attending care. So I know Rick might know a little bit about this stuff, but the history of CILT is long now. I remember back when it was young, but started in 1994, 75 people. And then it's just grown. to now we have around 900 participants in Ontario, and it's growing by the day as we keep interviewing and preparing people.
And lots of pressure to keep it growing and
Yes,
moving in our
that's the-
department, that's for sure.
That's the one myth we have to dispel sometimes, is that we want people on the program. We want to use this money. So we know we do everything we can to help people get on the program.
Yeah, just to throw in this, it's 30 years now since direct funding started, and I guess 40th anniversary for CILT in general. So some big anniversaries that we're celebrating right now. So
Lots of events going on.
yes.
And here in Toronto is where I am. We couldn't do it without the 11 independent living centers that are across the province, representing everywhere from you name it in Ontario, and it's covered. So disabled people in all corners can get access and get this program's available to them. So we have wonderful people working around the province too.
Yeah, lots of partnerships, and that, I guess, working remotely really lends itself to that in terms of just the vast area that we cover. It's amazing since coming on to CILT, actually, just how many people. I had no idea actually before CILT, even though I've been very much involved in the disability community here in Toronto, how vast the direct funding program is. It's really great. So I'm really enjoying getting to know people working in the other ILRCs.
I'm just gonna say, Eva and Thomas, if you want to let me know when you want me to press next, just because I've been doing it, but then also just worried that I might be interrupting you.
No,
No problem.
it's all good.
All right, you can move it on.
Okay, what is direct funding? So adults manage their own attendance services anywhere in Ontario. As a self-manager, you become an employer of your attendants. It's very official, no cash under the table. And that service they provide is to help with ADLs and anything to get through the day surrounding personal services.
Yeah, and generally it is based on it's in lieu of delivered service, so it's not a whole lot different from what traditional attendant services would provide. Although people come our way with sort of larger expectations than what we will speak to the limits of the program, but I think people often come with expectations that are a little bit larger than what it provides. But in terms of flexibility and choice, it absolutely is not rivaled by anything else out there. So even though there are some funding constraints for sure, which we'll speak to. Next.
Okay, this is often a big question for everybody. You do have to be over 16 and you have to have a permanent disability. This is something that gets tricky sometimes with people. Like we can't fund people who are recovering from cancer, and there's a lot of other like aging is something we can't cover. It has to be a physical disability. Resident of Ontario, valid OHIP card. And you need to have a thorough understanding of what you need. You'd be surprised how many people receive services from various ways their whole life, but sometimes you don't have a complete grasp. The disabilities change too with age and time. So that awareness of what you need is very important. And especially important for this program is to cognitively be able to manage all of these employment responsibilities. You don't have to do all of the bookkeeping, but you have to know what goes on. You have to have a relationship with your bookkeeper and report to CILT on what's going on with the money. And it's a challenge to keep track of your employees and scheduling them and taking care of them as you would as an employer. Thanks, Jessica.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to add that you're in a unique situation where you are the client, but also the manager of everything. So it's, you know, for some folks, it's a big thing to adjust to. It's a big, you know, it's a big thing you're taking on and essentially running a small business on top of your daily routines and everything else that goes on in your life. And it, for some people, it works incredibly well, and for some, it's, you know, it's hard to find people, recruit. It's hard to manage some of those tasks. So it really depends on the individual. Next.
The application process. So first off, you have to determine, and there's a lot of honesty you have to have with yourself and determine whether direct funding is right for you. Some people really just like having the services come, they get done what they need. And obviously in this day and age, there's, you know, it's hard to hire and things. So you have to be able to have the drive to be on the program. It doesn't just happen. So maybe there's other options if you don't want to do that bookkeeping aspect or be an employer. You just have to make sure the program's right for you. You can apply online at it's dfontario, one word, .ca. It's the fastest way. There's an online application there and it's fill-inable. Or you can fax it or mail it in. And there's the website with the application. The application gets done and sent to the DF website, and then it would be generally me that would look at the new applications, determine whether they're a suitable applicant, at least on paper. And then sometimes applications come in various forms, maybe no signature, maybe no witness signature, maybe no information at all and just a name. And that's when I have to follow up and make sure we get that application complete before it'll actually go onto the wait list. And
Yeah,
then,
and go ahead. Sorry, Thomas. We're not in sync. Just wanted to add to, you know, the part about determining if direct funding is the right program. What we sometimes find is that you know, people end up on the wait list that, you know, maybe the application was completed at a time in their life where they were you know, just dealing with a new injury, or, you know, maybe not in the best situation, and perhaps a well-intentioned social worker helped them apply, or whoever was kind of helping in their recovery process. And sometimes we find people, you know, have been waiting. They're in an urgent situation where they need the support, but maybe they didn't review everything. So it's very hard. And we feel for those folks, like we kind of when they get to the top of the wait list and we're meeting with them, for them to then discover that, you know what, this is maybe not at all what I expected, and then it's kind of backtracking into, you know, what else would work, and sort of realizing that this is a lot more than they sort of bargained for. So just stressing that reviewing everything ahead of time is so important. And, you know, if you're sharing that information with someone, or if you're supporting someone through the process of applying or doing it yourself, it's really crucial. And there's a lot of information on the website that gives you so many insights into like how everything works and looks. So just taking that time is very important.
I noticed the question.
Sorry,
go ahead.
Thomas, I just want to pop in quick because someone just put in the chat box that you can hire a bookkeeper with the direct funding funds.
Yes, exactly. So it would be, we do have a list of bookkeepers that know the program very well and have many other self-managers on their payroll, and that the paying of the bookkeeper is covered by the direct funding program. It's $200 a month, and you are welcome to get your own bookkeeper, but it's highly recommended they have an initial information session with our finance team, so they know some of the ins and outs that they'll have to recognize as being on the program.
Yeah, and it's a very helpful tool. I think, and again, Rick could speak to this as well. I think at the very beginning of when the program started, there were no bookkeepers at all. And I think soon into it getting rolling, it was something that was recognized that it would be very helpful to have a bookkeeper. Rick, if you want to say something to that.
Yeah, when I started, I was able to hire a bookkeeper. I started somewhere between 30 and 20 years ago. I can't remember exactly. But it was still in the pilot program. And but I just hired my own bookkeeper, and when I compare it to how things are operating now, it was pretty sloppy back then when I was doing it with my own bookkeeper. But the one that I was recommended through direct funding has been terrific. We do everything virtually, even payroll. She'll send me the check templates, and I just print them at home,
It's
and
great.
everything works really smoothly.
That's amazing. That's great. Yeah, it's so when we talk to people that are coming onto the program, they just want to get an idea of everything, and there's just so many details. But and a lot of people actually can't wrap their head around like, what? You're still issuing checks, and it is a kind of a system that still works because it lets you keep track of things. But you know, being able to print them off, like the just things being sent sort of digitally right now, you know, and even with T4s and things like that, you don't ever really need to see that bookkeeper in person. We always do remind folks, though, that you know the bookkeeper, as much as they're such an asset, they're also your employee, right? So you really have to be on top of your game in terms of knowing what the bookkeeper's doing. We sometimes tell little stories and anecdotes of things that have happened to people along the way, and there's been instances where people have or one person had they didn't realize that the bookkeeper had missed a few steps and for like a 6-month period was calculating things incorrectly, and the employees didn't notice, the self-manager didn't notice, and it became a really kind of big procedure to unravel all the little errors. It started as something really small with deductions, but we like to stress the importance of being on top of everything that they do, even though they're a wonderful asset and help. Okay, next.
Hey, Josephine.
Thank you.
The famous wait list. The most common question is the time on the wait list. So we can proudly say we're at about a year. Over the past 30 years, it's been as high as 7. I don't think it's ever been under a year. COVID created a lot of problems for us, as with everybody, and it's taken a little time to clean up what happened. And also the technology was old too. We still had evidence of missed faxes and things like that, but now we're up and running. The time on the wait list is generally a year plus some months, but yeah, we're still working at it. Obviously, the ideal is to not have one, but just the sheer number. And just so you know, we do have roughly about almost 600 people on the wait list now.
Across Ontario.
Across Ontario, yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I mean, when you factor in the fact that as an intake team, we're a pretty small team actually. So it has to be a very concerted effort on our part to start. I mean, you have to work through sections of the wait list chronologically, and things aren't it's not like everything gets going right away with everybody because people's circumstances vary, and I can let Thomas speak a little bit more how we work through it in chunks a little bit. But it's a lot. And people don't always have all the information. So, just because you get to them, there's a lot kind of to just start the prep process. But we were talking recently with Thomas about as we reach out to people that are on the wait list, we want to make that time that people are actually waiting to be at the top, to take the opportunity and study and review things, because it's that kind of idle time, and all the information is on our website. So people really could be using that time productively rather than waiting till we contact them and actually send them materials. So that's something that we're trying to really actively work on with new applicants now as we receive applications.
Yeah,
Thomas, I'll
thanks,
let you
Eva.
speak to some of the things to consider. I apologize if you hear my dog in the background a little bit. I don't know if my mic picks it up, but I have a Chihuahua in the house, so occasionally there might be some noise.
So when it comes to the wait list, what happens generally is it's not like we go, there's someone at the top and we call them and we process them completely and we go to the next person. Really, we usually reach out at maybe 10 or 15 applicants at a time, and we try and get a grasp of who is really driven to get going. There's a lot of life goes on with disabled people, and sometimes, like Eva said, it's just not the right time of life to make this kind of commitment. So generally, it's about 1 or 2 out of 10 really get going, and just get going on the preparations. And we try and keep people engaged and keep them going to get onto the program. And I lost the train of thought there though. But really what you have to do is to see if you're ready for it at that time of life. And some people we do have to follow up on and see what time of life. We try and figure how am I going to word this. So some people are not ready for it, and that's totally okay. One of the myths surrounding it is that if you don't do it, or say you're going to get going at the time, and then you go back to the bottom of the wait list, but that's simply not true. What happens is, let's say your service is okay, or your disability is okay at the moment, but you might need us later. Once you're at the top of the wait list, once we contact you, you're always there. So it could be a couple months down the road, it could be a year down the road. You can call us up and say, I'm ready to go now, and then we'll get you going. That cover a bit, Eva? Oh, you're muted, Eva.
Sorry, everybody. I muted the dog and I forgot. We'll speak in a little bit more detail in the next slide to some of the things that Thomas mentioned, but some of the important things to think of and consider are, how your schedule is going to look and what you want from the program. Because I mean, people come from different situations, whether they're getting some support from family or paying for privately. So sometimes their schedule doesn't look exactly like what it could be in an ideal world on the program. So it's some of the things that we find when people are starting the prep process, or and is figuring out what their schedule could look like, and also within sort of realistic expectations of what the program can provide. Like often we have people come to us saying, okay, well, I'll need, then they can go with me to the store, or they can take me for a walk or a stroll, just to get some fresh air. There's a lot of expectation around exercise, and so there's different limitations to the program that they affect how people configure their schedule in the prep process, and that takes quite a bit of time actually for people to refine realistic expectations. And as we work with those individuals, we don't want people to be kind of set up for disappointment in the interview, because there is a lot of scrutiny by the panel based on the criteria. So it's nice when people can kind of review that and be prepared to to lay out everything that they'd like to do, but then we kind of help them balance that out and also break it down into chunks, because it's not only I guess, having your needs met, but also, working with how those things can be configured for being able to hire people at certain times, obviously like an hour at a time sometimes doesn't work. So sometimes grouping different tasks throughout your day. So it really does take a completely different perspective on kind of how your routines works throughout a day. Yeah, I think I've covered most of that. I think we can go to the next slide then.
Just before we go to the next slide, there's a couple questions in the chat box.
Yes, just noticed that.
Yeah, so one is going back, I think, to the whole, like the payroll and everything. So actually
Yes.
the question just is payroll deductions with a question mark.
So we'll get to that. We're going to talk a little bit more about like employer responsibilities. So we'll definitely touch on that.
Okay. The next one, oh, sorry. So is it challenging to get people to stop using agency care when accepted to direct funding?
When you're deemed eligible for the program, there's usually a transition, is the short answer. Obviously, we don't want you to stop getting your service once you're deemed eligible, because even the process of the paperwork and starting to hire takes time. So with whatever service they're receiving, we get in contact with each other and try and build out a good time when that overlap can happen, because sometimes you can just hire somebody for your morning shift and then maybe your evening shift isn't covered yet. So it's all individualized depending on what you have now. And we just want to make sure you're getting the service you need until you're fully on the program. But it is very case by case.
Yeah, and it depends where you're living. Some people that are living maybe in a more remote area, maybe it's not as quick, to get your complement of staff. So it really, really varies. And also we encourage folks to get in touch with the direct funding network, the self-manager network, because sometimes people live in close proximity to each other but don't know it, and can maybe share staff. And I mean, there's different relationships kind of evolve out of that, but it's very case by case.
Another question from the chat: can agencies be used to train direct funding attendants?
In general, yes, and no. And we really encourage that independent living aspect. So we would generally expect people to train their new staff on what they need. But there are cases where in that transition, maybe there's a procedure, you have an agency staff that does know that well, and they can train the new staff on it. Oh, yes, Rick?
Yeah.
Yeah, so in the beginning, when I started my program, that was a challenge where, having that security of knowing that you've got someone reliable coming, because you don't necessarily have the backup of the agency. But I actually poached some people from the agency that worked for me, so that gave me a head start when I started onto direct funding. It's just people that worked for an agency that really liked working for me, and then when I made the switch, they said, well, that they would come onto my payroll and still work for the agency for other people. So it worked out well for me.
Yeah, and we hear that a lot, actually. People are like, they're just about to, complete their interview, or they've just been found eligible, and they're like, okay, I have a few people, working with me right now that I think I might ask. And often too, the question is like, am I allowed to kind of headhunt? Like, is there going to be a penalty for that? And I mean, again, privately, how you relate to that person, and if they want to come and work for you, why not? Unless there's, it shouldn't be too much of an issue if they have the availability. So yeah, but and also I think often we get questions about like, well, when I have agency staff working with me, 2 people do my transfer, for example. So that's a big one that comes up in Toronto anyway, where I guess just with agency turnover, sometimes they will send 2 people for certain transfers. And again, on direct funding, as long as you're performing your transfer safely and keeping the attendant's safety in mind, there is no requirement for that. But it does throw a few people off. They're like, well, what do you mean I can't have 2 people? They're not going to complete my transfer. So it's kind of a transition to that. But what we encourage people to do, because sometimes there might be spatial constrictions in people's homes, or depending on what their individual needs are, is that you can have a community OT work with you to sort of improve on some things, or if they if you want to break down the training of how to perform your transfer in different parts of your home or with different equipment. All of those things are available through the community to get that extra support with training as you get your own roster of staff. But like Thomas said, the expectation is that you are in charge of all of that and are training people to meet your needs.
Just another question. This one is for
Mhm.
Rick.
Ah.
So Rick, were you able to pay your poached PSW at an equivalent rate?
I find that the agencies tend to pay more, at least a little more, and that does become a bit of a bone of contention for some people. But if you have a block of hours that's attractive to someone, as opposed to having to travel around and do 1-hour visits for the agency, they may prefer to do that. So if I had a 2.5-hour block of time that I could give that same person, then chances are, even if I'm paying $1 or $2 less, they look at it as an advantage that they don't have to run around to 3 different clients. So it's not quite on par with the agencies, but it's less of a hassle for the PSWs generally.
Both Eva and I were former attendants, and to get somebody on the program was actually a pretty sought after job, because then you just had that consistency with that individual. It is a nice job to have. Now the pay scale is from minimum to 25 here at CILT. It was 22 until January, and now it's 25. So we're very happy to make it somewhat competitive, the pay scale now.
For sure. And I don't know in other areas, but like in Toronto, just working for a supportive housing agency, on average, the attendance starts like at like 2160, and then it goes up from there. I don't know how the specific agency staff that do outreach get paid. I know the agency often gets a chunk of the money. So we hear from people that some of the agency staff actually make around 18 or 19, and the agency kind of pockets the rest. So it really depends. But again, that individual relationship that you have with the person, I over the years worked with many self-managers in Toronto, and I'd take $20 anytime over a high stress job where you're running around and you don't know who you're going to next, and in building that relationship that you have with people that forms over time. So those are definitely big trade-offs, like payoffs in terms of building that connection.
Okay. I talked a little bit about it before, being at the top of the wait list. Like I said, we reach out 10 to 15 or so. We evaluate who's really ready to go, either by circumstance or determination. Each individual we talk to, and we have to clarify, obviously within that 10 we reach out to, we don't ignore the ones that didn't respond. We're in contact with them, we're seeing where they are with their life, and we're keeping track of it. So hopefully we can hear from them later when they're ready. And then the interview preparation meetings. So generally, there's a basic premise of at least 3 preparation meetings. Every individual is different depending on their needs. I've prepped people, it's taken me, up to 10 preparation meetings, and some people 3. There's no right or wrong to it, and it doesn't affect your eligibility in any way. It's just, we want people ready for the interview. And the key thing is getting that service plan built surrounding those needs when you apply. And if it does take a year before you hear from us, things change. So one of the first things we do is we revise your application to your present tense needs, not to what you applied with. And then we build a service plan that would establish that chunk of time you need for the booking, whatever personal care within it. And then we start talking about the employer responsibilities. Generally, we've already sent out that paperwork that you kind of research. We help you put it together. We coach you where there's weak spots. Some people get very intimidated by the idea of talking about deductions and taxes, but we do make it simple and clear. And then being ready for the process, everybody's ready at different levels, and that's what we kind of adjust to. Anything to add to that, Eva, or?
No, that's good. I think the next slide will take us more in
Clarify
depth,
more.
but I just want to say I did notice that there's another question about scheduling attendance and sign-in sheets and things. So we'll
yeah,
get
okay.
to that after this section. We'll talk a little bit about that. So we'll answer your question then. Okay, so interview preparation further. Yeah, so generally as we take people off the wait list and contact them, they work with their local independent living center to study and prepare. The study materials are sent out at that time, but as we mentioned before, they're also available on the website. So there's a lot of studying and preparation that people can do while they wait till they're at the top of the list. And like Thomas said, it's an individual process for everyone. But of course, the important areas, we definitely help people kind of tune into that and what to expect from the interview. And yeah, it really varies. Sometimes people need to take a break during the process. Things come up. Sometimes they progress very quickly. Sometimes they come almost completely ready to us. So it really varies. And when we say like we kind of go in chunks of the wait list, it's because of that push and pull. Sometimes you get going with someone and everything's going great, and then they pause, and so you're on to the next person. So it's a bit of a juggling act, to say the least. But we just keep plugging away through that, and we get to know a lot of people along the way, and spend quite a bit of time with them. Yeah, but it's very individual. Anything to add, Thomas?
Well, yeah, we do get very nosy. Obviously, to build a service plan, we are talking about the nitty gritty of everything. So it's something just to be prepared for. Some people aren't. And, sometimes some people aren't comfortable talking to a male about it. So we adjust for sure. We want everybody to be as comfortable discussing their personal life as they can be. I think we can go on.
Yeah, go next.
Okay. This is some of the things we go over during the preparation. That is the employer responsibilities. We, through direct funding, pretty much just provide the money for the staff, for you to recruit, hire, and train them, and to pay them, as it says, with the help of the bookkeeper. You have to do a quarterly report to the direct funding program. You have to the taxes, register with WSIB, which is the Workplace Safety Insurance Board, and you have to follow the Employment Standards Act and the Human Rights Code. The information we send you about all of this, I know some people just dive into reading the Employment Standards Act. It is a very large document, as is the Human Rights Code. We give you the information you need from those massive general legislations. Like, we guide along the way. We don't give you the Employment Standards Act and say figure it out. The information we send is all from those legislations, and we go over it all together.
Yeah, and in terms of tying into the question that was asked, how to schedule
Mhm.
attendance, sign-in sheets, phone time app, what does CILT require for audits? So again, like with the quarterly reports, you know, you're with the help of your bookkeeper, you're providing all of the financial information that's required. We have report reviewers, so the finance department is constantly working in the background with you. I think sometimes people, when they're applying, they're like, okay, so I can get this money and then what? You know, you have to keep in mind you get your approved budget deposited monthly, and you kind of focus on things a month at a time. Obviously you're checking on things throughout, and then you're having the quarterly reports. So it's an ongoing process and a team that you can rely on and communicate with, should you need, and of course with the bookkeeper. And the other pieces, that the responsibilities, I mean, there's a lot of pitfalls if you don't you know, issue an ROE in time, or if you you know, don't submit money to the CRA in a timely manner. There's fines, there's risks to this, right, which you assume as a self-manager. And it's important that people understand what they're taking on, and that they have to be on top of these things, because it requires constant maintenance and attention to detail.
And just for that last question, SILT require for what does SILT require for audits? I'm not sure if that refers to the governmental audits. I do know, because it is government funding, a lot of self-managers get audited a lot. But if everything's on the up and up, it's usually okay. If it's not, like Eva said, you're the boss, and so if you break the rules of the Employment Standards Act or the Human Rights Code, those fines and levies are yours. Direct funding can't cover fines.
Yeah. So if you don't dismiss someone correctly, you know, they can personally come after you and take you to court. Like, those are realities and risks of being on the program if you don't manage it correctly. I'm trying to
But
think also.
even when on the program, we do have a whole team of resources and things that can help you through some of these factors. Like when it comes to WSIB, registering for it, you would have to do. We would help you get the paperwork and describe some of the ways to make it easier for you. And direct funding covers WSIB charges. What would it be?
So there's
And I
just
see this-
another, oh, sorry,
Yeah, go
Tom,
ahead.
go ahead.
No, I just see there's another question.
Oh, yes, that's what I was gonna say. So in case attendant is not available to come if they're sick, is additional funding provided for emergency care?
Generally, if one of your attendants is sick, you should always, again, this is something we talk about, you should always have someone who would be a very good backup. So that you have someone available who can come on short notice. It doesn't always happen. Now, this might be a bit off topic, but if you become sick and need more care, every budget has a contingency built into it. So let's say if you have to go to the hospital and you come back and you need an hour more a day, we do have that flexibility within the budget, so that would be covered.
Yeah, and some folks have, you know, emergency hours built into their budget depending on what their needs are. I mean, you can imagine someone that maybe requires assistance with respiration or other things that can become really urgent. There is additional funding available for sort of on the spot, you know, paying someone a little bit more to show up on short notice, that type of thing. So again, that's discussed when building your individual schedule as you prepare for the interview, and is proposed to the panel before you go into that interview. Well, there's also a question. The question before that, there's in terms of sign-in sheets. I'll just touch on that. There's so many different ways that people just with current technology can have people sign in. There's apps, but we always say like paper's probably the most reliable. Someone's actually signing it. There's no debate what they've written. And of course, those things can get scanned to the bookkeeper relatively easily. Some people have more complex Excel spreadsheets that calculate everything. They might have a tablet that they have it on. I've seen over the years people do so many different things, including recently one self-manager that I worked for had like a WhatsApp channel that the whole team was on, and an embedded app that would post his whole schedule so the team could see it. The team sort of worked together as well. Like there's, I think, 6 or 7 of us. So if people needed to trade off a shift, of course, there were rules to what we were allowed to do and changes we could make, but it worked so well. And if he needed something last minute, he could just send a message to all of us, or even look at like, where did so and so put this or that? You're not making separate calls or sending separate texts. So there's just so many ways you can set things up, including with timesheets and just communication with your staff. Thanks, Mark. Yeah, no, there's just so many ways. Mark's just commenting that that's amazing. Yeah, like my mind's been blown a few times on how people organize themselves, and how technology kind of does stuff for you now without much effort. So it's lovely. Okay, where
Next
were
slide.
we? Next slide, yeah.
The direct funding interview. It's all pretty here. The eligibility interview includes 2 direct funding staff and 1 consumer who's usually a self-manager, someone on the program. We try and get a similar demographic, so similar disabilities, age, so that the panelists can relate well with the applicant. The interviews can be up to 3 hours long, sometimes 2 parts. It doesn't affect your eligibility. Obviously, some people have different communication needs that take longer, and so 2 parts is okay. The eligibility panel meets after the interview and discusses the situation to determine that eligibility. And the interview itself can be virtual, which is what we kind of adopted to over COVID, but now we're trying to do more in-person interviews because it's just better to be face-to-face with somebody, to see them in their home, especially to see what their situation is and just get a clearer picture. If you're eligible, we don't say anything during the interview. We don't mention anything until after the panel convenes. If you're eligible, you get a phone call and an official letter. It does take about a month to build the actual agreement because it's a relatively lengthy document of about 50 pages of legal aspects, and it's very individualized. If you're not eligible, we would send a letter within a couple weeks, just clarifying where were the weak spots in the interview. It's to become not eligible. I don't know, how would you say it, Eva? We would have a pretty clear list of reasons why eligibility wouldn't be possible for certain individuals.
Yeah, and it's something that can be appealed, and people can reapply, I think, within a year, in cases that where you might be deemed ineligible. In some interviews, if people are maybe unclear on a couple of points, we might do a little follow-up. But if someone's clearly not prepared, then obviously, if they don't meet the eligibility criteria, that's when we would follow up. But we endeavor to make sure everybody feels ready before they proceed with the interview. And again, there's no limit on that time, like you have to be ready in 2 weeks. Like it's very individual for people, and we do try to give them the feedback and the support to you know, have mastered all of those things before getting to the interview portion.
Okay.
But one more thing to add, and in terms of like getting going on things, like there's just a lot of things to consider. Of course, there's the liability insurance, which is covered, setting up accounts, things like that. So once someone is deemed eligible, they get a whole, like as part with the contract, you get a whole startup package. There's a resource team that helps people with all the next steps. So again, it's quite a process. It doesn't all happen overnight. And again, the staffing turnover, the hiring, the adjusting to things, you know, the first report that you submit. Again, lots of steps, and the teams between intake and the onboarding kind of try to break it down into smaller chunks for people that they kind of work through.
There is another question
Yeah.
in the chat box. Would it be a breach of ESA for someone to work 7 days a week if they only 4 hours per day, or would days off be required?
Yes.
Classic question. Yes,
Yeah.
it is
So
a breach.
yeah. So 1 day off is required.
No matter how much they work.
Yeah.
That week.
But it's just 1 day.
Okay, next slide. So here's some of the funding. We talked about the personal care. Here are some other aspects. We do fund overnights for turns, hydration, whatever is needed, IC. And like I mentioned earlier, there is some flexibility and with the contingency funds that allow for those needs. For shifts that are less than 2 hours, we do provide a small travel allowance depending on the transit costs wherever you are in Ontario. We would add a travel allowance for one way of that shift. Like in Toronto, it's $350. We would just have that on top of the shift. I know it's not much, but it can be a difference maker. We also build into the budget occasional hours, which are for appointments, training, and illness, training of staff, illness for yourself, but also going to doctor or specialist appointments, but not for social activities, sorry to say. And we also have nurturing assistance. I probably should also include, we do have a special fund for students too, in case they need our services while they're going through university or what have you.
Yeah, and going back to the flexibility point, like if you are hospitalized for a bit, like your staff can come and help you out wherever you are. You know, people have traveled with their staff as well. You know, and that can be sort of negotiated or paid at a flat rate. And the funding is portable. So if you decide to relocate within Ontario, obviously, your funding will follow you. So that's another really nice thing about it.
And if you happen to move to another province, we are connected with the other provinces in Canada. And I believe there's a 30-day overlap where if an Ontario person moves to Manitoba, we would fund for 30 days while that individual gets set up in Manitoba.
Okay.
Oh, nurturing assistance. Nurturing assistance, sorry, I'll just jump in there, Julie, to answer the question. Nurturing assistance is when you have a child in the house, and the nurturing assistance would cover what a mother or father would do for that child, usually a baby.
Yeah. Oh, Rick, travel out of province. Yeah. There is
30 days, I think, isn't it? Or
yes, up to 30 days. And again, that can be paid on a flat rate, or I think people have even hired attendants wherever they're going, and then that's you might pay that up front, but then the program can reimburse hours. Like obviously there's regulations to it and how those hours are set, but there are opportunities to do that. Can DF participants enhance the funding for an Ontario vacation? I'm not sure what you mean, enhance.
The-
Or use the funding?
That probably refers,
Oh, you want mute, Rick?
I was
that's
thinking
probably
like if
referring,
you, similar
yeah.
to the similar question previously, I had understood that you're restricted to Ontario, but if you're going to go on to a vacation away from your home site, you might have to enhance payment to somebody who's your attendant who would maybe come with you. So I'm just wondering, you can mix your own funds to add into it, even though it's not funded by DF. But we could enhance that payment structure for them. They'd still have to pay tax and all the other stuff. It's just that the source would be personal rather than from DF.
Yes. Yes, that is definitely a possibility for sure. Sorry, I misunderstood how you worded that. Yes.
That was me.
Yeah, no, that's good. Thank you. That's a great question. And I guess that applies to anything. Like if there are things outside of the scope of the program, people sometimes will add their personal funds for things that the program might not cover. I think a big one is, people want more assistance with exercise. Like the program only covers 20 minutes of range of motion, for example, but maybe you have a standing frame, or maybe a Motomed bike or something else. So like as part of your shift, you could, add your own funds to sort of continue that time that the staff is there. But it is outside of the funding that the program provides. Mindful of time, I guess we're a minute away from 4.
Well, I was just gonna say, Eva and Thomas, if you're okay to stay on for a bit, we are too, so we can
Okay, yeah, absolutely.
continue
We can,
on. And
yeah.
for those that have to leave, this is recorded, and will be posted on our Core Tree platform, as well as we send out a thank you email, and the link will be on there as well, so you won't miss anything. So if you're good to continue, yep, so are we.
Yeah, for sure. I am. Thomas, you good?
Yep, I got a few minutes for sure.
Yeah, and we can maybe like the rest of our slides are sort of more about like talking about the benefits of the program and some personal testimonies. But I think if people want to ask some more questions
Yeah.
or have more of a fluid conversation, we can kind of switch gears to that.
I think the rest of the slides, yeah, you can go through them quickly, Jess. It's more just some benefits. We see a lot of benefits every day. It's
Yeah.
really amazing stories come out of this province of just to be able to choose who comes into your house. For a lot of people, makes them mentally stronger, and it has ramifications on their family. We see a lot of spousal stress, like it's very hard on relationships. So we're very proud on the program to be able to allow family to be family, not only spouses, but obviously parental or a sibling. And so it's good to be able to, obviously they still have to do a lot, but the program really alleviates a lot of that pressure.
For sure.
And sorry, I'm in the same, it's all there.
Now we can go to the next one. Yeah, like and greater choice, independence, and control. These are quotes from people on the program. DF has given me the freedom to choose my own attendants who best meet my needs around my schedule as opposed to around the agency's schedule. And I'm confident that my attendants will show up for their shift since I have control over who is coming, and I'm able to get in touch with the attendant directly in the event that they are late for a shift, as opposed to having to go through a middle person to get information. So those are all huge things.
Yeah.
in terms of being in control and having that connection to the people that support you. Okay, next slide.
Much along the same lines, increase control over services. It's just kind of more of the same. It's just really great to see how people can benefit from the program. Those first few months of preparation and getting on are hard. I'm not going to lie about it. There's a lot of work to do. There's a lot of calling to make. But everybody I've talked to who actually gets on, gets it going, hiring is always a challenge, but you have this for the rest of your life, and you can have that control for the rest of it.
Yeah, and again, more along the lines of an increased level of satisfaction with attendant services. Recently, I was talking to a person that is in the process of prepping, and kind of had some like a little Q&A session with her and her partner, and a lot of what I'm hearing is you know, the staff that come in from agency will like they'll refuse to do certain things, they'll rush, if they're not, like I said, with the transfers, for example, if there isn't a second person, they'll leave, they'll be like, well, I can't help you. And so it's just incredible level of frustration that people are experiencing in the community because some of these rules and just limitations on shortages with staffing as well through agencies. It's pretty awful. And the other beautiful piece is that you don't have to hire someone who's a trained PSW. The premise is that you are the expert in what you need, and you are the best person to teach the staff that you hire about what your needs are. So it does broaden the people that you can hire as well. If you feel comfortable with the person and you feel that they will listen to you and meet your needs, they don't have to be a PSW.
And thank you for mentioning that, Eva. I was going to mention that too. It's very important to keep your mind open that way. But the one thing we do shut the door on is family members being on the payroll of the program.
Yes.
We can't have any family members. There's a variety of reasons, but basically just to keep that line in the sand drawn so things don't get blurry.
And I think during COVID, there was a brief time when things were really bad and it was hard to hire, where there was an exception to that rule, just out of necessity. But it is a very clear line. And I think the ministry has been a little bit more defined about that. I think before it could be like, the cousin twice removed kind of thing. Like it is very clear that any relatives are off the payroll for sure. What about cost for liability for attendant? Yeah, go ahead, Thomas.
So in general, most home insurances cover about $1 million. We require it to be punched up to 2. Simply call your insurance organization and you'd submit that document, but direct funding does cover that difference. It's usually under $10 a month, but direct funding does cover that difference.
And of course, you have the WSIB as well. And I know in prep we do talk about just your responsibility around making sure that things are safe within your home, and just as an employer, just being diligent about how your equipment is maintained, how the space is set up, body mechanics, things like that. Those all fall on you as an employer. And even with the coverage, like people often say, like, well, can somebody sue me for an accident or something? Absolutely, people can. Whether they'll succeed is another story. But if you are negligent in maintaining equipment, or have a known tripping hazard or something, like there are definitely implications that could come out of it. And if you ignore those things. Must the attendant have liability insurance? No, they don't. I think on other programs,
Family managed.
like family managed supports, they do have to purchase their own. But in this case, the insurance that Thomas mentioned, it's basically for domestic workers. And then you're also paying into WSIB, which covers what's needed for the program. Service dogs, are they okay? Yes,
Really okay.
absolute service dogs. Yeah.
Many of them out there. We
Yeah.
even had a service horse. Didn't we even?
Oh, that's right.
We had
There,
a service
there
horse who helped somebody
or a
with the
pony,
tail
right?
and-
Yeah.
Yeah, pony,
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, when I was working for someone not long ago before I started on with CILT, he had a service dog, and again, I mean, there's limitations. It's not like they can take your dog for a run in the morning for like an hour, but you do take the dog out, and that was really fun to be able to go, during the shifts to take a stroll with the dog. 10, 15 minutes, but yeah, there was support for the dog. Thank you very much. Someone said in Mark, great presentation. Oh, you're welcome. I don't know if we've covered I think we've covered most of it. Really
They
appreciate
can
the
always
individual's questions.
contact us anytime.
Yeah, we're open to answering any questions that come up after, or don't hesitate to reach out. I think our contacts will be shared as well.
Yeah, so along with the recording, we will, I think I mentioned this before, we'll send out a thank you email. The recording will be linked to that, as well as this information. And even Thomas, again, if you're okay with it, we can put your email addresses on there as well, if people have questions afterwards that they want to ask.
Absolutely, anytime.
Mhm.
Okay. Is there any last minute questions that anybody has? Great. Well, thank you so much, Eva and Thomas. This has been awesome. Great information.
So-
Oh,
I have
Ryan,
one
you have a
question.
question?
Yes.
What are ADLs?
Activities of daily living.
What?
Activities of daily living.
Oh, okay. Okay, thanks.
Welcome.
Those tasks to do to get you going through the day. So what's the more technical way of saying it, Eva?
ADLs?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I
Activities
mean,
of daily living.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's just attendant service jargon, I guess.
Yeah. I guess.
Sort of,
I think it's Revenue Canada jargon too.
Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, ADLs. Yeah.
Okay, well, thanks.
Have you got any indication today how difficult it is to get attendance? Do you get any snapshot from your current user base as to?
In fact, we were just having a session with self-managers all over Ontario. We talk to them every 3 or 4 months. We have an open session like this with them. And it is, to be honest, always a challenge. It is one of, it is a constant thing you have to do as a self-manager. But as many of them said, as the challenge is when they get someone good or suitable, it is life-changing for sure.
Yeah. I have a friend who lives around the corner who has the program, and I really could use it, but she said, I'm not going to introduce you to any of my attendants. And she also said, don't pick a student or students because they all take the same vacation. They all have the same exam periods. And you'll be not just out one, you'll be out a few. So that challenge is still there, I guess.
A lot of challenges. There is for the agencies too, but that's why that pay increase was so important. Because it was hearing the self-managers in the autumn compared to now is very different. So the word of mouth of the $25 instead of 22, that's the maximum. It's getting out there. Because like we said,
I
attendance.
mean, it must be a little bit better for the province too, because I mean, March of Dimes carries the overhead for the management and everything like that for me now. And of
Mhm.
course, yeah, you're right. There's a lot of no's involved in their service delivery, but having self or direct funding sounds like it would be better for the government and the end participant. Or
It really is, because whenever we contact somebody to do that transition from whatever services they're getting to the direct funding services, they never fight us, because that means all the money comes from the same spot, but
yeah,
at least they can reallocate their resources to someone else in need, and it just kind of keeps shifting that way. But yes, it is. It does alleviate the supportive housing, the outreach.
Yeah.
For sure.
well, thanks a lot. I found this really helpful.
You're welcome. It's our pleasure.
Good, we're glad. Yeah.
Thanks for all your questions, Mark. Okay,
bet.
so again, just thank you to everyone. Thank you, Thomas and Eva. Thank you everyone for joining us. Our next Peer Connections actually is on Thursday on daily skin checks and preventing pressure wounds. So if you're interested in that, check out our website. Otherwise, I hope everyone has a great rest of their day and stays cool for the rest of the week by the sounds of it.
Thanks,
Thank you,
everyone.
everyone.
Thank
And
you.
don't hesitate to reach out if anything comes up or you need any insights along the way. And we hope to meet you in prep sometime, maybe, or on the list
Get
somewhere.
an application in.
Yeah. All the best to everyone. Thank you
Take
so
care,
much.
everyone.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone.